Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Burn Desire Show. And today I have Roger Wilson Crane alongside me, who I'm going to interview and hopefully share some of his story with.
Hi, Charles. Thanks for having me. Lovely to be here.
It's a pleasure. So I always go, I said to you in the pre-call, I always like to understand someone's background from early age as to how that might have led to where they are now. Just a quick kind of summary of what I've read and understand, 25 plus years in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
Yes. All different kind of roles, I presume, culminating in managing director of a company with 35 employees. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Which is for the last 12 years.
So how do you get into the automotive industry? Was it always a passion of yours when you were younger? Did you like cars, or you kind of fell into it, or how did that happen?
If I'm brutally honest, no, I still don't have a passion for cars, to be fair. I think I've always been a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been, even from a young age, when I left school at 16. So I didn't go on to do A-levels. I left basically because I wanted a job and earn money.
Mm-hmm.
And from ever since I did, I was a manager of a hotel for a while, and that's front facing.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for Edinburgh Wool Mill for a while, which was also front facing and sales, etc. So everything I've ever done really has been always about customers, people. I was going to say gift of the gab. I probably was early on. I don't think as I grew up, I was like that. So getting in the motor industry was only because I needed a job at that time. I just literally, if I remember rightly, I'd become not self-employed. I'd taken this a job as an agent selling textured coating company to put on houses, and I'd done that for about 6 months. But it was, to be fair, it was pretty horrible because you're going into people's homes and you are trying to sell them something that, do they really need it? But so I sort of wanted to get out of that quickly, and a job just came up as a salesperson in a dealership selling Jeeps, Grand Chrysler and Grand Cherokees. So I took that job, and that was my start of 25 years in the industry. And I was retail sales in Leeds for a little while, and then an opportunity came up in Doncaster where I lived as a fleet sales person for Ford in the local dealership. So I applied for that, got that, and I did that for a few years, and I became manager there. And then basically, and it's very complicated, so I can't really go into it, but because of the relationship that a certain customer had with Ford Motor Company and the dealership, the customer wanted to grow it and wanted me to grow it for him. So he asked me to, another monumental decision I made, he asked me to leave my job, which was very sort of, it was fine, it was good, it was okay, and set up this business that he hoped would be very successful. So it was a gamble, but I did that, and that was 10 years ago.
Okay. So
I became the MD of that new company, if you like, from day scratch. We had a team of 3 when we first started. And we've built that up over 10 years to what it is today, which is a multi-million-pound private, very successful company working very closely with Ford Motor Company. So it's been quite a journey.
So what does that company actually do within the sector?
I suppose the best way of putting it, it is a conduit to the leasing broker market. So all those websites that you see advertising a Ford Focus for £200 a month, we are Ford's conduit that, if you like, have support terms that we give to those brokers, and we police those brokers to make sure they're all doing everything rightly. So we're the middleman, if you like. So it's Ford to us, out to the broker. So we're the auditors to make sure that everything is done correctly. So yeah, and that's grown from 1,000 units a year to 10,000 units a year for it's not as high as that the last couple of years due to what's happened, but yeah, so we are Ford's largest contract hire supplier, if you like.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how did you find the transition from, I guess it was quite gradual, but from salesperson to then managing people to then obviously then having your own business to a degree?
Yeah, interesting, because when I was writing, I was looking back a lot, and I was trying to work out how I'd changed and when I'd changed, because I am a very hands-on manager or MD, but I'm also, I listen a lot. I take ideas on board. I don't believe in big stick. I believe in the team is the same as me. So yes, of course you're the boss, but I've always tried to deal with people and have people on the team that feel that they can say what they, how they feel. Take them with you all the time. Be part of a team. Nothing's too daft to ask. And even if there's bad bits, learn together. I don't like confrontation, Charles, is probably the best way of putting it.
Sure.
So conciliatory and softly, and taking people with me has always been my mantra as a manager. And I've done that, whichever, from manager to managing director. I've never changed in that way. And it's successful for me, but I'm not saying it's the right way, but it was for me.
I'm interested as well. This is just personal opinion. The dealings that I've had with the automotive industry recently with my current car and previous cars, even my brother's car, anyone that I've come across, not the buying of it, but the aftercare side of it, I don't know if it's the UK or general, is terrible. Actually, beyond terrible. It's abominable, actually, as to how lackadaisical it is, how they kind of, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but they feel like they've got over a barrel and they just tell you certain things need doing. And if you're not mechanically minded, you have no idea really. It's this kind of asymmetric information that I find is a bit of an issue. I don't know. Have you found over the years that the industry's changed somewhat into the kind of how things are sold, as to how the aftercare sales process works, that kind of thing?
I think how things are sold has hugely improved over the years, and that's down to certainly the financial, the FCA being involved and getting tighter and tighter over the years. So that from a consumer point of view is a lot better, I have to say, from even when I started. The issue is, unfortunately, there are still really very good dealers in all manufacturers, and there are some very poor ones, and it is hard because there isn't a standard, and there is no particular, I don't really think there's a standard that you have to adhere to in a manufacturer world. So I sort of get it, and you have trust. You have to have trust in your dealership, especially on the after sales side. If someone says you need 2 new tires, and you're not mechanically minded, and I'm not, so I'd be in exactly the same boat. I am trusting that dealership or wherever I'm going to, that they're telling me the truth. And it is really difficult, and you can get some pretty poor ones still. And I suppose I don't have any suggestions apart from you go to the next dealer, it depends where you're living, of course, until you do find one. And there is usually one. I mean, if you're in Manchester area, for instance, there will be a dealership that will be very good, and you'll be able to stay with that. You might have to drive a bit further.
Sure.
But yeah.
That makes sense. So coming on to what you're talking about before, which brings us nicely into COVID. So I presume business was growing at that point in time. COVID hits. Explain what happens then.
Well, yeah, I've done 10 years at it, and however much I enjoyed it, the stresses of the role, if you like, beginning to take the toll, Charles, to be honest. So in September 2019, I said to the shareholders that I wanted to take a back seat, that I couldn't do it anymore, really, from that sort of quarterly targets and all that sort of thing. I've been doing it for so long. And they asked me to stay on as a sort of part-time consultant, because I had a lot of relationships still. And they said, look, would you stay in the capacity of helping out, being on call? So we agreed that I would step back at the end of March 2020.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. And then that got cut short early-ish by the first lockdown. And I was still I was kind of carry on being employed anyway. So to be fair, the business said, well, we may as well put you on furlough because you're not going to be doing the job anyway. So, you know, go on furlough for the time being. But the difference with that, Charles, to be fair, was I was going to carry on being part of the business at that point. And so that day when lockdown came at the end of March, you know, I was having 120 emails a day, you know, 20, 25 phone calls, etc., etc. And on that day I had nothing, zilch. And I found that so hard, really hard. Because I was expecting to be a little bit involved, and then I'd go off and do other bits and do a bit of gardening and support Victoria, my wife, at home, because she was, you know, working full time, 10 hours a day at home. So yeah, that was really tough for me early on. I sort of set off like a train of doing things, get the jet wash out and do all the bits, but I would go hammer and tongs every day and be exhausted then, as though I was trying to either prove to myself or prove to my wife that, you know, yes, I'll make sure I'm busy every single day.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while and just thought it was doing me no good at all. And then through the summer, I mean, it was a lovely summer, but I found myself watching the news all day and all the daily briefings, and really sort of getting into it not in a very healthy way, as in, you know, watching everything, listening to everything. And I have to say, through the summer I was quite lost, but in April, we had made a decision that we would apply to be foster carers. Because I could be the main one, Victoria could be a support, even though, you know, she was working all the time. And I thought, this is really good for giving something back. You know, I've worked for 40 years in my life, try and give something back. So it's a long drawn out process, and you don't, you know, so you do a few bits and then you don't hear anything for a few months. So the summer I felt pretty lost, I have to say. And then it was sort of October time really, when Victoria, my wife, said, there's a Write That Book group on Facebook, a guy called Michael Heppel, who's a well-renowned international coach, and he's doing a course. Why don't you join it? And I said, no way, absolutely no way. And that, again, this is really a really odd thing, but I have a public persona, Charles, one that I've lived with for all my life, and I'm very, very private. So I have a very, you know, huge private life. Even the team at the business didn't know too much about me, if that makes sense. Not because I was hiding anything, just because I just don't talk about myself. So the thought of joining a Facebook Zoom group and putting myself out there, or just being there, filled me with absolute dread. But she made me in the end. She said, look, it could do you good. You've always wanted to write a book. You said that, and one of the things you're going to do when you sort of semi-retired, so, you know, this might help. And I have to say, within the first session, there was about, I think, 1,000 people joined this group.
Wow. And
Michael Heppel was running it, and his inspiration was just extraordinary for me. It was like a light bulb went off, and it lasted. The original group lasted about a week, and they set you challenges every day. You know, come up with a title, come up with a cover, come up with the, you know, the sort of structure of your book, and it is intense. But I absolutely loved it, and then I was interacting with people I'd never heard of, never known. These strangers, but it was great, you know, because we're all in the same, you know, we're all bouncing off each other with ideas. And then after that, you got an option of joining a masterclass, which is a paid thing, which lasts for 3 months. Well, I was within seconds, I was off and running. So that was my sort of journey to start writing the book. And the sad thing from the fostering point of view was I in the January of 21, so a year ago, I suffered a horrible double slip disc, which I ended up in hospital for 12 days. And when I came out, I was literally back to where I sort of started, from a bit of a lost way. But also, I suddenly then we couldn't become foster carers and I can't still become a foster carer until I've had a medical that passes me. Even though the back's a little is better and I can wander and walk, it's a health and safety, and I get that. So that was really sad from that point of view. But it then opened the other door where I just wrote in the end and carried on writing and finished the book. Yeah.
You said something, I think it's on the Amazon bio. Say again.
I said something. Go on.
No, I like it, and I'm very, very much agree with you on this. Something along the lines of, I paraphrased it, but you're talking about the extracurricular, let's go with that, activities that you do. So amateur dramatics or things outside of work that keep the creative juices flowing. I like that. I think it's very true. It's something that I do with this podcast, and I have book reviews that I do, and a couple other things as well. I think it's funny because at school, if you were to ask someone, or ask me if I was creative, I'd say no, because I can't draw, and I can't anything like that. Like if you gave me a three-dimensional, vectors, or whatever they do in maths, I've got no idea what I'm looking at. So you would, in school, obviously they box you off as to oh, you're not. But in terms of business wise, or in terms of all these other things, then I'm off the scales creative, which you, again, at school, maybe you wouldn't think you were. So I think everyone is creative. It's just in different capacities. And yeah, I like what you say about kind of having other things going on other than just kind of work.
Yes, I did quite a bit of amateur dramatics over many years. Lots of different parts. I never got the sort of leading handsome male role, which I'm not sure if you're surprised about or not, Charles, to be fair, but always the supporting funny lead, that one. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and of course the amateur productions got better over the years, where you had microphones, and then you had proper sound and etc. So certainly in the late 90s and early 2000s, when I was doing at the height of it, I did the Full Monty musical.
Wow.
And I did it 6 times in the end over a period of 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Playing the part of Fat Dave. You're not surprised, I see.
I don't know what it is, but it sounds hilarious. I mean, I do know what it is. Obviously, it's not a whole, but I can't remember the exact character.
Yeah. Hopefully, some people, if they when they watch this, will. So I played that, and I adored the part, and I also adored just going on stage, the adulation of an audience.
It's interesting that you enjoyed that, and yet you're like a private person, right? Maybe it's like playing a character you're kind of comfortable with, I guess.
Yeah, and strangely, again, I think when I put myself out, when I was doing that book, and since then, as if you like, as an author, I am me now, and yet even my working life, I think I maybe have been playing a part. If that makes sense.
Definitely.
Not in a horrible way or etc. Sure. But just that persona of myself to suppliers, to customers, it's right. So I think you're right. Because I walked on stage every night and I was Dave. I wasn't me, and so I had no qualms about that. I thought it's just the most wonderful experience, especially if the production's good and the audience love it. I used to adore curtain calls at the end. Just that moment when you come on and bow at the end was just very special.
How do you compare that feeling to say the business has gone well, or had a good quarter, or is there any comparison or no for you?
Sorry, say that again. Sorry, George.
So how do you compare the adulation, as you call it, at the curtain call or whatever, to say you've had a good quarter in the business or whatever else, or is there no comparison for you?
That's just not. I mean, honestly, I would still be managing director if at the end of each quarter I got the same feeling as I did when I was doing my curtain call.
Maybe they should introduce that as a new thing on the flip side.
I should have thought of that. It's a good suggestion. No, absolutely. It's more relief. It became more relief,
right,
from a business point of view, because of course the targets get higher and higher. You'll know this business. It just gets higher and higher, harder and harder to hit. and then the stress levels of hitting that, it is literally a relief on that last day. And then you start a new quarter, and you're all right for the first month or so, because not a lot's happening. And then the sleepless nights start again, and I just couldn't cope with that any longer. So yeah, definitely relief. Yeah, and we never missed one, by the way.
Very good. That's good to know. What is interesting, coming full circle. So we started at the beginning talking a little about how you got into automotive, but way before that, when you're 14, I believe you wrote and directed a school play. Is it?
Yeah, I did, and I don't remember too much about it. I just remember that I wrote it, and it was a mystery, and it had a briefcase attached to it for some reason. I remember that, and there was only 3 people in 3 parts, and I was one of them, because I wrote it. So I have to be in it, don't I? and I directed it, and that was in front of the whole school. We did that, and we did it 2 mornings running as assemblies. It only must have been about 15 or 20 minutes long. But yeah, I have memories of it, but not really deep memories, and it's quite surprising then when I wrote the book, and I'm thinking it's 40 years since you've written something properly, apart from emails, for that. But yeah, and which is sort of made me quite sad, I have to say. It's took me. I know work gets in the way, relationships get in the way, life gets in the way. I wish I'd done it so much earlier. I knew I had it in me, but I just didn't do it, and yeah, a bit sad. But yeah, 14, I was, but I didn't do another one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way of looking. The other way of looking at it is that at least you found it now, and at least you've got on to publish a book, which a lot of people pass without ever really finding what it is. I've been very kind of, I suppose maybe the word is fortunate in some respects, that my grandfather lived in the States for like 25 years or so. 6 months there, 6 months here. When I used to visit him there, I used to play golf, and all the people that would kind of I play with were like octogenarians and like later stage of life. Let's go with that. And had all these stories, and were, by the very nature of where the club was, were very successful in whatever they did. And I always remember talking to them and hearing different things. And one particular person, never know the person's name, I couldn't tell you who it was. They were telling me they were a very successful lawyer. They had all the rest of it, all the trappings. And then for some reason, they spent 2 years like in one of the islands, not for tax purposes, just for some sort of role they did. I'm not quite sure. It was very different to what they previously did, and they loved it, and they couldn't believe how many years they'd spent in the grind, hating what they were doing. And I think I've been exposed to all this kind of knowledge from people that have experienced obviously much more than I have, which kind of really pushes me to make sure that I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, that I'm not just doing something for just chasing carrots that most people, unfortunately, I think fall into the trap of. Anyway, so that's a side problem that I like to kind of
but it is quite interesting, because I've never you talked about that, I've never been materialistic. So I don't hanker after the best car or the best house, or I've always just wanted, I don't know, enough, just enough so you can heat the house and go on a nice holiday and go to the theatre. And I've never been, I've never wanted the biggest watch or which is, and I do feel that's from my upbringing when we were, as a family, we didn't have a lot, basically, and I think that was instilled with me by my mother, and I've kept that all my life. So I'm grateful for her that she's made me that type of person, to be honest.
Sure, which brings us on to the book that you authored called Certified, which is, correct me wrong, it's a fictional book that is based somewhat loosely, or maybe not loosely, on some of the life experience that you've had. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, it is. I started to write it. I wanted to write about my father's passing. He wasn't with us when I was from the age of 13, and we didn't have anything to do with him for, well, up to his death, really. There was a little small part where we tried to reconcile, if you like. So when he passed away, we as a family, had to sort of, with cremation and bury him, etc. And I wanted to write about the farcical events of that week. And yes, of course, it was a little bit sad, but it was also very funny in one of those ways where everything is always, there's comedy in most things. And we found some bits in his house, which found some money under a mattress, which we didn't think he'd have a penny. We under a ceiling that was, how on earth he'd slept in it, below it, because it was literally like that. It was a archway of where the water had been sitting, and then so we had to clear that out. We didn't. I'm being brutally honest here. We didn't want to have anything to do with the funeral. We said to the council. The council came to us and said, "Well, he's your father," and we went, "Not really, to be honest. We don't really want to get involved." So they arranged all the cremation. So, which again, we're looking back, I think to myself, "Oh, maybe we should have done really," but the way we felt was the fact that no, we shouldn't.
Sure.
So they organised everything, and that was only going to be us four kids, if you like, turning up for it, which we did. And as we were going in, there was these people walking up towards the crematorium, and they were all dressed in Morrison's outfits. There must have been 15, 20 of them, Charles, and they were just walking. We thought they were, for another cremation or after hours, because we were saying, what time are you in? We're saying we're in at 12:30. They said, well, we're in at 12:30. Well, you can't be, because it's our father. And they said, what you mean, Alan Wilson, your father? Yeah, yes. And they said, well, that's who we've come to pay our respects to. We didn't know he had any children. And then you have conversations with them, and he'd been going into the local Morrisons for every day for years and years, which was only literally 10 miles away from where.
Talking about the supermarket here.
Yeah, sorry, the supermarket.
Yeah, I was like Morris. I was trying to figure out what exactly Morrison's meant. Okay, supermarket. Yeah.
Yeah, Morrison supermarket. We've been going in weekly, and all the staff have got to know him over the years. All knew him, all loved him to bits, and they come to say goodbye, and they knew nothing about this man really, because there's four children stood there, or grown men, and so they all came in, and actually it was quite nice, because it was quite full then. We were at the front, they were behind us, but they literally come on their lunch break, which was lovely.
Wow.
So that's in the book. So I wanted to write that, and then his last wish is he wanted to be his ashes to be strewn over a certain rock in the Yorkshire Dales, because we were brought up in Settle, up in the Yorkshire Dales.
Sure.
And he wanted to be that's where he wanted his ashes to be thrown, if you like. And we'd never heard of this rock, and we came from this area, and we asked around and we asked locally. Nobody heard of this rock. But instead of just going up into the Dales, Charles, and throwing it over a rock, we literally went up and down these little roads, thin roads, up and down. In February time it was, freezing cold, raining, all the family. So I had my daughter then, who was only about 5, in the back in a buggy. We had the dog in the boot. We had brothers and sisters all. It was like a convoy. And the trouble is, when you have a convoy and you've got a tractor coming the other way, then you're all in a ditch. And we spent hours looking for a rock that we didn't even know existed. It was bizarre. And then we finally then said, look, this one looks all right, and he'll be happy, type of thing. And then the wind got up just as my brother was making a speech on top of this rock, of course. Well, you know what happens then. You've got the dog catching my father's bits. You've got it in the bobble hat of my daughter. And my mother was the only one who was protected. She had an umbrella, so nobody else had an umbrella. And honestly, so and they're all running to back to your cars. It was like and then you sat in your car and you're covered in that. And honestly, it was
the funniest thing I've heard for a while. I'll tell you.
It was. Well, it was, and I just so the whole point of that, I wanted to write about that.
Yeah.
That whole process. The money we found in the mattress, for instance, we spent it on a slap-up meal in in the only restaurant in Settle, I think it was at the time, which only housed 2 tables. I mean, it was, you know, it was so small. You know, you get those little restaurants.
Sure.
And I just remember them running out of wine, and I'm saying, well, how do you run out of wine? Christ, we'd only had 2 bottles, Charles, for Pete's sake, for 8 of us. So I said, I'll go to the pub and get some. He said, you can't do that. You know, it's that sort of thing. So I did anyway and came back, and then they tried to stop us from drinking it. Is that? that was so. Anyway, so I wanted to write about that, but that will never make a full book.
Yeah.
So when I was doing the course with Michael Apple, they would, okay, what can I do then? And I became a father quite late in life. I'd sort of I'd had I'm going to get a bit serious here now. I had a sort of bad relationship in my late 20s, which was a bit toxic, and the person I was with could occasionally be violent, and so I got out of that when I'd met my next partner, but I'd got to the age of 30 then, and she particularly, you know, whether we wanted children, we never really talked about it, and I just thought, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, you know. I'll just, you know, life is what life is. So when our daughter came on, she was unexpected. It made me then think I can write about this, because then I can really be me and go back and actually, because I've never talked about that time in my life when I suffered a bit, and how it made me, if that makes sense. The person I became, the person that doesn't like confrontation, that type of thing.
Makes sense.
So I thought, well, I can write about that. I can write about, and I can also make it funny, because there are, you know, bits that are funny in the book, and that particular part. One of them, especially, where the pregnancy test hits the wardrobe, smashes into smithereens. That when it looks as though we might be having a child, but looking back, I mean, you laugh now, but at the time it was heartbreaking, for both, or me.
Was this a child with the toxic partner, or the one?
No, so this was after I walked out one day. I'd met in the book, she's called Dawn. I'll call her Dawn just for the purposes, just to get, although I do get on with my daughter's mother really, really well. But so I'd met her at work in my new job when I was working in the motor trade.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was still in the toxic relationship, and I probably would have stayed there for ages, child. And you forget about, you not forget, you know, I've never, because like I say, I've never talked to people about it, but you don't tell anybody about it. So my family knew nothing about it. You just hid it.
Yeah. And
then you moved on. You know, you would say, okay, let's just try and make it not happen again, and it'll be all right. And we love each other, and that probably, I don't know where. You know, I might have carried on for years. I don't know. But I met Dawn, as she's called in the book, and so one day I just literally walked out, to be fair, and I didn't tell the girl before. I just went. I think I only took my passport, a little bag, toothbrush, left everything, you know, in the house that we were sharing, that was mine. Just felt probably out of being a bit scared, maybe, I don't know. But I also left the dog, my dog, which I completely had forgotten about. So I'm arriving at the new home with Dawn, who's very happily accepted me into her life. And she says, "Where's Bonnie? Where's the dog?" And I completely, utterly, I remember stroking her, saying goodbye. Well, not saying goodbye, but just stroking her. And I was like, and so, you know, in the book, and it's a true story, I didn't want to ever talk to this girl again.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But in the end, I did, because I wanted to get my dog back. And so I had to, she's awful. I hope nobody ever watched it. In the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
But so what I did was I said, I miss the dog so much. Can I come over and walk her? And in the end, I got a yes, and I went over, because it was literally, I was living in Doncaster, and this is going back to Yorkshire Dale. So
Yeah.
it's a 2 hour drive. So I went over and so how long are you going to be? That's a couple of hours, if that's all right, you know. And literally put her in the boot and clear off down.
I had a feeling that
Dog
was
napping. It was a Operation Dog Nap. So that all that part that's the first story.
great.
And there's a couple of twists which happened, which I can't say, which are pretty sad and heartbreaking
Sure.
in that first section. So now I've got an unexpected birth. I've got a bizarre death. There's a third story, and then so the easiest thing then was, well, it's got to be about the certificates then. You know, you've got a birth certificate, marriage certificate, death certificate.
Sure.
And
I've
been to a couple of, well, I've been to many weddings, as we all have, and I've been to some really strange ones, some funny ones, and so I thought, oh, I can write that then. I can write about me in that, take a bit of creative license, you know, embellish bits. So then I wrote the middle bit, which is about myself and Dawn getting married, but it takes a lot of things of what actually happened in other weddings, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a child, I was a choir boy, and I remember as a choir boy, some child, because I was very lucky. I was allowed to carry the cross, so someone had dropped the cross a few weeks before, this child, and had made a big dimple in it, a bit like forgot Ted Robbins, like a big dimple. So they were taken off it, and I've been given the responsibility. And it was at a wedding, so you walk down first, you've got a big cross, and so I had that, and then when you put the cross in, I remember then you had to kneel in front of the altar, etc. And I hadn't realised that one of the kids had written on my shoes on the back in white. I don't know if it was chalk, I can't remember, and it was two swear words. One was F, and the other one was off.
Yeah.
So the congregation behind could see quite clearly. And that was my first ever wedding.
Wow.
That I ever went to. So yeah, so there's lots of that sort of stuff. So I've tried to make it really, really funny. There's a run-in with Justin Timberlake because he sort of took the wedding venue that we were going to have in the beautiful area of Puglia. So he's involved heavily in the wedding section. And I can't comment whether how much is true or false at this stage. So yeah, so I just wanted to make it funny, as truthful as I could, make it funny, but also make it raw, honest, emotional, so that I could take the reader on a journey.
Yep.
I feel as though it's a bit like, you might remember, it's a bit like a very long Ronnie Corbett monologue.
Yeah.
From those days of the two Ronnies, where he starts the story and then he goes off and then comes back to that main story and keeps going. It's how I felt when I was writing it. So hopefully I'm cool. I don't know. I went on a bit there, didn't I?
No, it's super interesting. I think from reading as well, you found it, as I imagine one would, very cathartic as an exercise, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. Strangely enough, I did. Yeah. Yeah, because at first I started to write it as a absolute memoir. But first and foremost, it was a bit heavy and a bit boring, I think, to be honest, and it needed some bit of license to give the light moments. But yeah, it did, because looking back, we were talking about the way I manage, if you like, and the way I am as a person. The father I am, I'm a very laid back. You know, my daughter's 21 now, and I can't remember. I might have shouted at her once in her whole life.
Yeah.
It's all about sitting down. What have you done wrong? Why did you do that? What are the consequences of that? Will it very much a sort of conciliatory, quiet, and I do believe that's probably come from that late 20s in my life, where I avoid confrontation nearly at all costs, if you like.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the main reasons for this podcast is I'm a firm believer that anybody or everybody rather has interesting stories to tell. And I think you're a great example of that, where maybe if someone that you've worked with, your colleagues, that kind of thing, they see you as the managing director, the guy that kind of leads the company and all those sort of things. A lot of people forget that there's a human there that's gone through lots of experiences and it's got lots of interesting stories to tell. So I'm always, the biggest purpose of this platform is obviously to share people's stories, but it's to try and show people that you really should learn and try and learn more from everyone around you, because there's so much experience that anyone and everyone's been through that can add some kind of add some value to what you're trying to do, really. It's interesting. So I'm curious, did you your friends, family, and colleagues, was this like they were not expecting you to write a book? Was that, apart from your wife, of course, who pushed you along the way?
I talked to a family about it, that I was writing it, and they were fine. The horrible thing is that I've got I've got two brothers and a sister, and as I was writing the book, I was finding it really difficult to involve them all. So actually, the whole book is missing a brother, which he's okay with. He's fine, but for the purposes of the script, if you like, it's the best way of putting it. He was one to go, because my other brother, my elder brother, well, they're both older than me, but my oldest brother, he was he's now retired, but he was a policeman and a detective, and so I had lots of I'm going to go with to be able to utilize that, if that makes sense.
For sure.
In the stories that needed help, whereas he was a very good and successful builder of houses, but that was no good to me for this story. I do hope he watches this. I'm sorry, Paul.
I imagine then my next question, another book's coming where it centers around someone building houses.
Sure. Yeah, it'd be called Building Certificate. I've started just for him.
All about planning permission and how that works.
Yes, yeah. Oof. A lot of research going into that, weren't there? But yeah, I did talk to them. Yeah, and they've been fabulous. Actually, been so supportive, all of them. And I didn't say anything that every character in there, or every character is based on real people. None of them get apart from one, as is understandable, but none of them get a hard time, because they all been part of my life. There's a character in there called Big Mac, whose actual real name is Adrian, and he was a good friend over many years. I mean, built, he's literally 6'8", 20 odd stone, a huge man mountain, but he was a really good friend, and he's in the book a lot, from a sort of comedy angle, not because he's but just he was a funny character, and he is in real life. So all these people I've been lovely to, if you like. They're all lovely in the book, lovely.
It seems that from what I've looked at, the book's been pretty well received by critics and people alike. It was on the long list for the 2021. Is it pronounced SIBA Mark Twain Award?
SIBA, yeah. I'm on the long list at the moment, which is fantastic. Anyway, to be fair, I never dreamt, and that's in the humour and satire category. I'm not sure when the shortlist comes out. I keep an eye on it. The winner's not announced till April, and I'm just lovely to be nominated for anything.
Sure,
it's fantastic. But yeah, it has. It's been, and the thing is, from a confidence level, Charles, and you'll know this being in business, just generally as a person. I mean, when I finished it and published it, then people have got to read it, and the doubts at that point were huge, massive. Is it funny? I liked it. Of course I did. The publisher that I'd self-published with, they liked it. But you're like, but when the reviews start coming in, the feedbacks, yes, you're going to get friends saying it's lovely. They'll say that, won't they? But it's when the strangers start coming then, And that's been wonderful and overwhelming, to be fair, and made me feel very proud of it now. Yeah.
That's great. And you're on some form of, I didn't know this existed, but a digital UK book tour as well right now?
Yeah, they're called book blog tours, which have taken off recently, and I've only just mine's on at the moment, which basically your book is goes on a tour of a week to 10 days, and it's given to a different, your book is given to a different reviewer, or they're given them, but each day they have to review that book. So on the Monday, so somebody, and then Tuesday, and I just felt like it was like a rock tour for me. One of those, when you're going to all these venues, and so I've been posting on social media as though, so the book's in Southampton today, being reviewed by, the lovely Stacey, and it's being reviewed by lovely Lizzie in Glasgow. So it's a UK tour. And every day, yeah, they have to post. It's posted on social media. And I've had five 5-star reviews and some wonderful. One of them, which has stayed with me, which is, it's the 4 weddings and a funeral of the book world. And I can't think of any higher praise than that for the book, to be fair. I live on that forever.
That's amazing. So I did joke before, but is there a plan for another book in a different kind of remit, or you just kind of riding the wave, as it were, at the moment?
Well, it's riding the wave is one way of putting it, Charles. It's actually really hard work, because you've got to constantly trying to get that book out there. So, this book tour, this virtual book tour is one way, and hopefully it's like tentacles, not, I'm doing, podcasts like with yourself, which is great. And thanks for asking me on. So that is constantly going on and on all the time, because you just need to keep getting the book out. So writing another one, yeah, I do. I have started one. I haven't quite got the rhythm that I had for the first one, but I do want to do a loose follow-up, which is going to be based on the 3 dogs that I've had through my life, because some of the chapters, or a couple of the chapters in Certified, do talk about the dog Bonnie, and a lot of people fed back about how poignant and beautiful they were. And so, I've had dogs for the last 30 years, 20, have taken me through different stages of my life. So without, hopefully, repeating myself, I think if I can use enough more creative license, I'm going to write about the 3, and they're all flat coat retrievers, which is a certain breed that I've kept in my life now since 1995-ish, I think, something like that. I think I've got a title called A Life Retrieved. Do you like that?
Nice. Very nice.
So I'm on with it. Not only about 10,000-12,000 words written so far, but if I can get a rhythm going, I'd love to have that out by the end of the year, if all goes well. Yeah.
And what's your advice to someone who's watching or listening to this, and whether it's a book or something that they want to do that's maybe outside the remit of what they currently do? Like, what's your advice to someone trying to pursue something?
I think just do it is one thing. I think if it's something that you really always wanted to do, and I would say that, but also by taking that way back to when I've first refused to do an amateur dramatics. So this is a strange thing, because I didn't do a book. I didn't do that to start with. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going on stage. But as soon as I did it, I had a lifelong love and couldn't wait to get back to it. Same as writing the book. I should have done it years ago, because I thought I'd be all right. If you think, even if it hadn't been as successful as it had, is, I would still be very proud of it and glad I've done it. And I think we stop doing things like that, don't we? We think, oh, it's out of my comfort zone. It's not, or it's too hard, because I've got other things, and it's all about putting off stuff, isn't it? That we do. And if I had any advice, it's don't put it off. I put it off too long, far too long. Don't, whatever that might be. I don't, it's not about writing a book. There's lots of other things, isn't there, that people,
for sure,
don't put it off. Do it.
I think that the biggest thing as well on top of that is people's fear of what others might think of them doing something that's maybe not in keeping with the character that they think the person is, per se. So I think a lot of people do this, and you alluded to before, play certain characters in life and to friends or to family or to colleagues or whatever, and then that character can just become, you know, embodies you, but then deep down you've got these other kind of passions or interests that aren't aligned with that, so maybe you subdue them for a bit. It's trying to kind of, you know, be authentic and genuine. It's very cliche to say, but I think that you kind of need to do that as much as you can in this world.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's when people say, you know, well, I didn't think you could write a book. Well, no, but you know, I've never talked about it. And when I'd started writing, if we've still got time, it's a very quick story. When we started writing it, I started writing it. My old English teacher got hold of me, who I hadn't spoken to for, I don't know, 30 odd years, 35 years, whatever.
Wow.
He tracked me. He'd heard I was writing a book, and he was living in the Yorkshire Dales still. And he tracked me down through work. He'd managed to find where I was working and sent an email to, you know, just into the work.
Yeah.
And they sent it on to me and said, "Do you know this guy?" And I thought, "My God, he's my old English teacher." So I emailed him, and he said, "Is it true you're writing a book?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "It's so long overdue. You always were one of the most creative in the class. I don't know why you haven't done it earlier." And you think back and you think, oh, what a wonderful, beautiful thing to say. But then you think, you know, I think I've just scraped a C in English or whatever it was. I was just a class clown. But to think that, you know, he reached out, and B, to say, "Yeah, I always knew you could do this." And actually, I was just having a bit of a wobble. I think it was just after my slip disc. So his email was a huge inspiration to me to get back and do it. Him basically saying, "Yeah, I always knew you could do that, so do it." Oh, it's just phenomenal. Sorry, I just popped back into my head.
It's great. It's great. Well, listen, Roger, it's been really interesting and fascinating to have you on. I'll put a link in the show notes to the book. People can buy it. It sounds absolutely riveting and really funny, actually, from the stories that you told anyway. Hopefully they're not the best ones, and we've ruined it for everyone. I'm sure there's more to come. And yeah, I wish you the best with the virtual book tour. And yeah, let's maybe have you on again when you've written another book about the dogs. It'd be pretty interesting.
I would love to. And thanks very much for inviting me and having me, Charles. It's been lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roger.